Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down, a Thursday edition. That's right, folks, it's time for another theater throwback, because if it's not in the theaters, it is fair game on Thursdays, and last week, we dove into the Conjuring universe. Jeez, it feels so long ago. I feel like I should have done a couple throwbacks at this point, but it's been only a week since we watched The Conjuring and talked about that, and that's kind of propelled us into this universe. And we're not going to do things in order of release date, but kind of try to follow more of a chronological feel, starting with the Conjuring movies and then diving into their spin-offs and kind of following chronologically there as well. So even though sequentially Annabelle came out next, we're going to skip back 2 times, and like I said, we'll deal with the direct sequel to The Conjuring first. So why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat, we're getting ready to dive in spoiler-free on The Conjuring 2. Now, as I mentioned last week, I dig this franchise a lot, mostly because it's coming from like the master of horror, this generation's master of horror, Mr. James Wan, and he obviously producing all of the movies, but is the director here, and also screenplay, I think involved in more of the writing than he even was on the original Conjuring here in this sequel. And the first 2 Conjuring movies, Conjuring 1, Conjuring 2, we're getting ready, I figured it was a good time to dive into this as they're in production on The Conjuring 3, and also The Crooked Man, another spin-off movie from some lore that we actually get in this movie. He adds 2 characters to the Conjuring lore in The Conjuring 2 that eventually lead to spin-off movies, being The Nun, and either later this year or early next, The Crooked Man. And I just love when he is working in the movies that he directs. They're just better, and I'm just more drawn to the stories that involve Ed and Lorraine Warren, played brilliantly every time they're on screen by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. And I think the thing that works the best in this franchise in general is, and I said this last week, is when you're dealing with a family or a group of kids. The first one you have mom, dad, I think it's 4 kids. This one you have just a single mom in England with either 4 or 5 kids there. And then the other one that really works well is Annabelle Creation, which we'll do next week. As I said, we're going to skip over Annabelle twice, and we'll do the prequel movies and the spin-off movies in chronological order. But those 3 movies specifically, they all have a group of kids. And when kids are on the line, especially when you're talking about evil entities and demons, and ghosts and hauntings, it pulls you to the edge of your seat more than when you're dealing with adults dealing with these things. And that was kind of the problems I ran into with both Annabelle and The Nun. But the other thing that's fascinating too, just with this whole series, is the way that Wan is able to kind of sew them all together and kind of run that thread through all of them and drop little hints in the Conjuring movies to introduce things, and then in the spin-off movies to tie them really well into the movies. And we get that here. As we kind of get a glimpse of that exorcism that's mentioned in the first Conjuring, when Ed and Lorraine are dealing with a possession case in and around the Amityville house after like the big Amityville horror stories that we know, and in that we finally get to see what it was that kind of attacks Vera Farmiga. After that, in that video in the first Conjuring, you see like she had to step away for a little bit. And what we find out is it's this demon named Valak, of course, which eventually is becomes the nun. The form it takes is kind of the nun that leads us to that movie eventually. And what's really fascinating here is you watch like how they're kind of dealing with this stuff at home, and then all of a sudden, all the way over across the pond in England, we start to see a case very similar unfolding. A lot of people, back in that time said this was, England's version of Amityville. And once again, you're talking about, one of the kids. This one time, instead of the mom being the one that's kind of being possessed while the kids are getting messed with, here you have the kid being the one that's being possessed. And oh man, it just drives everything up an extra notch. And the kid here, Janet Hodgson, played by Madison Wolfe, excellent. She's so good, man. This little girl, like, you just feel for her because she really makes you feel like 2 different things are going on when she kind of spins into the possession aspect of it. And what I really like is the way that, like, the story in and of itself tells you these demons and these ghosts and they mess with you. They can take different forms, so the form that we're very familiar with in Valak is the nun form, but that demon utilizes other things, and in this one kind of takes control of a ghost inside of a house to get to the little girl and eventually start possessing her. And I just thought this story was fascinating. I really thought Wan was operating on high levels as far as tension and the creepy things he does. The stuff he does with the nun and the introduction of her. The way the lighting kind of changes around the picture that, the painting that Ed Warren makes, because he's been having this dream. When the lights are on, it looks like a painting, but then the lights go off and all of a sudden the eyes kind of shift a little bit. They glow, the face kind of shifts around, and you're like, wait, now it looks kind of is she actually there? And there's a moment where that kind of happens involving the picture, and there's some cool things, like you see stuff coming out from behind, yet everything is still within the frame. Really creepy stuff with her. And then when you act, into the fact that it's, kind of this ghost of an old man who died in the house that the Hodgson family lives in. You get really creepy stuff, and he utilizes the nun here a few times, and there's we've seen in the trailers when all the crosses in the room that the girl was staying in kind of flip upside down, and different things that happen there. Really, really creepy stuff, and then also introduces the fact that it can take different forms, as well as jumping onto the Crooked Man, which is a little kind of like toy that the kids have, and that of course will be the toy that the Warrens take back to their house later on. I love the story, and it really drives everything very similarly to the first Conjuring, in a high stakes place where you're just kind of like at the edge of your seat. But the nice twist that he throws in there this time is dealing with the concept of people who fake this kind of stuff. And we kind of have a couple other ghost hunters, across the pond that are working with the family before Ed and Lorraine get there. You're kind of seeing that, like, some of them kind of are buying into it, but others are kind of skeptical. And there's a moment that kind of confirms that this little girl might be throwing a hoax in there. And I like that the movie dove in and talked about that stuff, and then sets up a tremendous end of the third act that kind of brings you to the climax, and all the things that have been all the seeds that have been laid since the first Conjuring, in the way that Lorraine's kind of been attacked and kind of lessened, and the fact that there's kind of like these visions that she has that makes her fear, for Ed's life, and kind of not wanting to do some of these things because, she has a bad feeling and something could happen to Ed, and the way that just kind of all climaxes. Absolutely excellent. And you can't have a really excellent horror movie with just an excellent script. You have to have a really, really strong cast, and Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, again, I just think they're the perfect people to play these two characters. They play them so well. They really kind of suck you into their world. And, when you drop in the things that are factual to their lives, tied in these movies, it just gives it such a sense of realism, even more so than the spin-off movies that we get. So that's why The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2 are 1 and 2 for me when it comes to these. And they're right with each other, again, like working with the family, and a really strong cast of kids. Madison Wolfe, like I said, who plays Janet, she's excellent, man. She really makes you buy into the fact that she is being possessed. Much like what we got in the first one. Peggy Hodgson, played by Frances O'Connor, you just feel for this woman. She plays such a wonderful mother, who in and of herself is kind of skeptical at the beginning. And then when she sees things, is like, how can you guys not believe us? Like, I've seen supernatural things. I just thought she was a really strong, single parent in this movie that kind of acts as a real solid leader, and someone that, again, makes you pull on all the emotional heartstrings that suck you in and bring you to the edge of your seat. Along with the rest of the kids, you have Lauren Esposito playing Margaret Hodgson, Benjamin Hay plays Billy, and Patrick McCauley plays Johnny. And this family of 4 kids, the way they're kind of dealing, and the scenes and the things that happen, all of it just drives that suspense, and they all give really, really nice performances. Then you have Simon McBurney, who plays Maurice Grosse. He's kind of like the first person to kind of contact and be working with the family and seeing that there's something wrong. One of the people who's always backing them, while you have Franca Potente, who plays Anita Gregory, who is another person who's in helping out with kind of this ghost hunter situation, and she's the big skeptic. Every time something happens in the movie, we get this wonderful scene with Patrick Wilson and everybody are in the room talking to Janet, asking if she can let the ghost of the old man kind of come forward and talk. And when he does, Wan's so good, man. His camera work is so good. The way he kind of flows in and out of scenes throughout the whole movie is wonderful. But this scene in particular, he kind of defocuses on Janet, and you're focused on Patrick Wilson, and Ed, and as the background, it even comes more out of focus. You start to lose Janet, and all of a sudden you start to see a little bit more of the mouth moving and the things of the old man. Really cool. But everybody had to turn their back, so we see it, but not everyone can kind of buy it. And even though we're seeing this stuff, they develop a way where you're like, wait, is it a hoax? What's going on here? And Franca Potente does a really good job of being that skeptic. Then, of course, there's also the neighbors who help out, Maria Doyle Kennedy and Simon Delaney, who play Peggy and Vic Nottingham. I like them in the movie, too, because, Peggy's a bit of a skeptic, but Vic has definitely seen stuff and wants to help the family. They kind of give them a place for refuge. And the cast is so good that it drives all of the elements from the writing and the story and the things that we see. I mean, the ghostly stuff, the way they are able to make Janet, levitate sometimes or change rooms. There's a really cool sequence where she will constantly wake up and you think she's in bed and then she ends up in another place. And they finally show you one of those happen. You're like, wow, what? I didn't know we could do that. All that stuff just works really well. And like I said, I think this one just is on par with the first one, in the fact that we get really strong performances from everybody, including, of course, our leads. I just love Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson. And everybody that supports them in telling these stories. It just works, and then that sense of realism when you see the facts about the two at the end of the movie that they kind of drop in. You see the real pictures of all these people. All these people existed, and yes, the story has to be movie-ized, to make it work in the theater, but it just all works so well. And this was another story that I think, boom, just it makes you want The Conjuring 3, because I just love the stories of Ed and Lorraine, and the way this movie works, and the new demons or ghosts or creatures that he can kind of introduce into all of these is just so good, and it just allows a very diverse and rich world to play in, and James Wan does it oh so well. So I love The Conjuring 2. I think there's some really great scary pop moments, and like I said, you're on the edge of your seat a lot. So yeah, these first two Conjuring movies, the best of the franchise, and really strong work anytime James Wan is behind that camera, because the way he can kind of just fluidly move that camera in and out and go from one room to another and spin you around, and while the camera's not just moving and looks beautiful, but it's moving and he'll show you things, and oh wait, go back, I want to see more of that, and then boom, it leads you into things. Another excellently done movie by Mr. James Wan and the cast. So I'm a big fan of both The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2. The Conjuring 2 just below The Conjuring for me, but I love The Conjuring 2. Now, I want to know if you do, man. Hit those comments down below. Let me know everything you're thinking about The Conjuring 2. Have you seen the movie? Did you get yourself ready for this week and watch it? What did you like? What did you not like? Where do you think it lands in the entire franchise, and specifically up against, its predecessor, as it's the direct sequel to The Conjuring? Let me know all of that down below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new here, jump on over there, man. Hit that subscribe button. Come join our Cinema Sit-Down squad so that you can follow along every Thursday for theater throwbacks. And then hit that little bell so you get alerts every time I make a new video, specifically on these Thursdays, so you know that they're coming. That's it, man. We've got another one in the books next Thursday. If you were taking this wonderful Conjuring ride with us, we are not going to jump to Annabelle. As I said, we'll skip over it again, and we'll do the spin-off movies in chronological order, and it happens to be my third favorite in the franchise, Annabelle Creation. So that'll be next week. Make sure that you're staying tuned and keeping up to date on all that, but Annabelle Creation will be next week. That's all we've got to do for The Conjuring and another theater throwback. So for the C-Man Cinema Sit-Down, I'm the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace. Well, if you aren't still here, looking for something else to check out that's C-Man related, why don't you check out a video like this guy or this guy? And if you really want to help the C-Man out in year 2, hit that subscribe button and come join the Cinema Sit-Down squad, kids. You know what to do. See ya.